lot. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude for all who has joined us here today, even despite the fact that it's Friday and it's already almost after lunch, afternoon. It seems to me that we have, according to the new calendars, this day when spring meets winter. So it also gives us such some hopes that we can not only talk about certain plans, but to also implement them together. Of course, this topic is one of the root topics, one of the fundamental topics. So we are talking about widening the potential that it is in the level of hromadas, communities, and our personal resources. The most important thing are two practical aspects here. The first aspect is when we are talking about intermunicipal cooperation projects from the point of view of scale, because obviously we have to balance in the process of prioritization and recovery planning between the approach that is bottom-up approach to that point where we have this opportunity to focus on big things that have the biggest effect. Of course, that here the best solution is that's of course instruments and tools of regional policy, tools connected with proper planning, because we have now renewed state strategy of regional development, and typical documents are being prepared from the local level, and local government forms priorities and agenda. But on the level of donors, on the level of practical work with international financial institutions, more often than not, the question comes, do you want to have a big, structured, bankable project, or you want a regional recovery, local regional recovery. When we talk about local regional recovery, very often people perceive it as package. Too little project offers. Nobody looks at it as a substance that they can work with. But because of the initiatives that can be created, because of this intermunicipal cooperation, there is an opportunity to get to that scale that is extremely he says that has huge prospects from the point of view of all our actors, in particular international actors of the EU and certain financial institutions and private investors as well. The second thing, when we are talking about where we are right now in this process, on the 14th of June, we have 10 years of the law on cooperation of territorial communities. Lots of things have been done during this time. Sergei Ivanovich, our colleague, will give you the general review. But we understand that during those 10 years, we would have had certain success, but we also have certain disadvantages, and we need to understand what do we need to change. Our head of the committee, Olena Shulyak, chairperson of the Verkhovna Rada committee, is a little bit late today, but I still think that we will have time and opportunity to discuss all those priorities that we have to include in our legislation agenda. If we are talking about more effective work in this direction, then I do believe that it is very important here to communicate, to explain why intermunicipal cooperation is so important, because there are lots of jokes when, for example, community A and community B and they understand that they need one institution, or but they all worry about their political privileges, and somewhere they just do not want to share their success. We need to have less cases like that. We need to have more loyal society, and we need to understand that joint result is much better than absence of the result as such. But together with that, there are certain technical solutions that we need to work on. As you know, the ministry has to fill in the register of contracts of this cooperation of communities. Right now, it's an Excel file. It is renewed several times per month. We are working so that this register becomes a real digital tool, so it can live in our geoinformational system on monitoring of regional development. And on this stage, our discussion should be started today with this technical discussion on how we would like to see this register. So it is not just Excel chart that is moved into the GIZ system of the regional development, but really for it to be a tool where we will be able to work with best practices, where we can take already ready samples of documents, and also to develop some practical solutions for ourselves. Colleagues later will also make you familiar with QR code, and you will be able to fill in the survey and provide your suggestions concerning that. So today's discussion, I think it will be very practical. I'm extremely grateful to the head of communities who managed to join us today, and they will tell about their experience of municipal cooperation. We have stories of success, and I hope that when we get to this jubilee, to this milestone, we'll be able to tell many more successful stories. So thank you, and I hope for fruitful discussion. Thank you, Alexandra. Of course, as soon as we have Olena Shulak with us, we will give the floor to the chairperson of the Verkhovna Rada committee. But I would like to say that our today's event probably would not be able without support of one of our partners. The minister has been working with them on the constant basis. It is a British government which also provides practical support to territorial communities if to talk about development and the preparation of documents. So now I would like to give the floor to the development director at the British Embassy Kyiv, Stefan Kosov. And those who need interpreting, please use interpreting service both online and offline. Stefan, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you much, Chair. Deputy Minister, representatives of local communities, ladies and gentlemen. Although it is Friday afternoon and we are almost at the weekend, what better way to take us into the weekend than having this important discussion today about local communities and their role in Ukraine's recovery, and to hear about all the important work that's happening on the ground around this agenda. Getting practical, I think, as Deputy Minister said. As I'm sure all of you around the table are aware, according to the last World Bank Rapid Damage and Needs Assessment, the RDNA, the overall cost of reconstruction and recovery in Ukraine was estimated at something of the order of $411 billion, which stands at 2.6 times Ukraine's GDP. And this figure is obviously likely to grow again in the next RDNA, which will imminently be published. It obviously goes without saying that this represents a huge challenge for the country, both in financial and delivery terms. But we believe it's a challenge that can also be turned on its head and converted into a unique opportunity, largely because of the tremendous energy and resilience of Ukrainian society at all levels, but particularly at the local level. Ukraine has obviously achieved significant progress with the decentralization reform in recent years, and with the transfer of power and resources to local communities. This has empowered mayors, local councils, and ordinary citizens to take part in those decisions that most affect their lives. And following Russia's full-scale invasion, the decentralization reform has obviously contributed greatly to the resilience of the country's regions, to its municipalities, and to its communities, and their ability to support citizens on the ground. And I think it's probably not an understatement to say that this action at the local level has provided the very backbone to successful resistance against Russian aggression in both frontline areas, but also across the whole country. So for all of these reasons, we really do need to build our recovery efforts on the principles of decentralization and devolution of power. And we need to work to reinforce the ability of all of Ukraine's regions and local authorities to tackle both short-term recovery needs and longer-term economic development and reconstruction objectives. And we also need to work with local communities themselves to strengthen their capability to undertake critical reconstruction and social projects because there are critical constraints that we all know that exists at the local level. I'm really pleased to say that in response to the request from our wonderful partner, the Ministry of Restoration, the United Kingdom, through our Good Governance Fund, recently launched a project to support the recovery of those communities affected by the full-scale war. So 10 communities in 7 regions have been selected through an open competition to receive financial support totaling 13 million hryvnia. And this funding will be used to strengthen the systems and processes for infrastructure delivery, including social infrastructure, in several war-affected communities, including communities in Chernihiv, in Sumy, in Kharkiv, in Poltava, in Odessa, in Vinnytsia, and Mykolaiv. So, but let me reassure you, this is only the start for us. The UK stands ready to continue and scale up its support to community level recovery going forward. And we fundamentally recognise the crucial role that decentralisation has to play in ensuring inclusive economic recovery and balanced economic growth across different geographies in the country. The differences that are emerging between regions and communities require a tailored approach to reconstruction and recovery, and one that is sensitive to local needs and capacities. This is also critically about ensuring that no citizen is left behind and making sure that the needs of veterans, internally displaced communities, people with disabilities, and women are considered in achieving the future resilience and prosperity of the country. So with that in mind, the UK strongly welcomes the government of Ukraine's focus on locally owned inclusive recovery, including through the new regional development strategy, because this is going to be absolutely critical for spurring investment and unlocking Ukraine's huge economic potential. So let me just finish by underlining that the United Kingdom stands with Ukraine, both in terms of winning the war, but also laying the foundations for a sustainable peace and a national recovery. And we will continue to work closely with our colleagues at the Ministry of Restoration, but also alongside Harmadas and local communities throughout the whole country to achieve those outcomes. So thank you very much for inviting me today. I really look forward now to just sitting back and hearing from you all about how the experience is evolving on the ground, what still needs to be done, and how we can collectively work together in achieving shared goals around decentralisation and locally owned inclusive economic recovery. So, diolch.
Стефан, дякуємо вам велике за
Stefan,
вашу
thanks a lot for your introduction speech. Of course, it needless to say that what you have mentioned, we need to develop. You mentioned, and Alexandra Azarhina mentioned this as well, that cooperation between territorial communities can give an impetus if we are talking about implementation of projects of recovery, because with our joint efforts we can talk about upscaling of those projects and about solving some problems that Hromadas and communities are now facing, not on the level of one territorial community but also above community, engaging to the implementation of such projects, bigger amount of communities. And now it is my huge pleasure to give the floor to Olena Shulyak, chairperson of the Verkhovna Rada Committee. Hello, dear colleagues. On behalf of the committee, I would like to express my gratitude, first of all, to all projects of international technical support, our associations of local self-government, our representatives of local self-government for being those people who popularize cooperation on the level of territorial communities. I remember when in 2019 we came to the parliament, you even can look at the certain statistic, half of the agreements, even more than the half of the signed agreements, were in a very simple form. It was just, you know, work on joint projects, and there were only two active regions, that's Poltava region and Lviv region. And as of now, when the time has passed, we can state that geography has increased and we have the bigger amount of regions included to this cooperation of communities. And of course, projects as such become more complicated, more complex. They also there are projects in communal sphere, they are financed, and also there are lots of agreements among territorial communities of different levels. Right now, we do see how crucial it is to undertake different upscale projects, those which are connected with the solving problems of IDPs, also those projects which are connected with such important question for Ukraine when we are talking about construction waste. And there are lots of different projects in the recovery sphere, more than 100 of them. And it is possible to implement such projects if we use those tools which are now embedded on the level of cooperation of our territorial communities. Really, as it has been mentioned by previous speakers, I think that today we will be talking a lot about that. Our uh, basic law was voted for in Parliament more than 10 years ago, and at that time, it actually embedded the best practices, the best international practices. But in 2022 and 2023, we introduced some amendments to that legislation, to certain parts of it, but already now we understand that it is possible to improve this legislation. And I would like to repeat myself that our committee is always open for different offers, and we can become that platform where we'll be working on amendments to the legislation to improve existing mechanisms of cooperation of territorial communities. So that's why let's work. Thank you for the invitation and glory to Ukraine. Thank you, Olana. Thank you for being ready and being prepared to cooperate with the ministry, not only with the ministry, but also with the association to improve legislation in the sphere of decentralization. And at this point, I would like to stop for a little bit and inform to all the participants who are now online. If you have any questions, there will be an opportunity for Q&A. So please raise your hands, because then we will be able to switch you on so you can ask a question. Thank you. We will be very grateful for your active participation. And now I would like to give the floor to Sergei Ivanovich Shershov, Head of the Department for the Development of Local Self-Government, Territorial Organization of Power, Administrative Territorial Structure, who will tell us about how this cooperation of territorial communities happened, especially during that time, which was very difficult and important for territorial communities. We're talking about 2022-2024. Sergey, please, the floor is yours. Hello, everyone. I have a small presentation. If you please can make it visible for everyone. On the 1st of April of this year, we will be having 10 years anniversary from the accepting conceptual law, conceptual act, everything started with. On the 1st of April 2024, the Cabinet of Ministers approved a resolution about the concept of the reform of local self-government. With the forming of this document, fundamental changes started. They are mostly connected with the formation of new territorial basic for the activity of self-government bodies. Some processes took place which are connected to financial decentralization, and it became incentive, a push for further implementation of administrative territorial reform. Together with that, I would like to mention that this concept presupposed two ways of solving the main global problem for Ukraine that was connected with the fact that there we had too many administrative territorial units. Up to 2014, Ukraine had around 80% of administrative territorial units, and the population was less than 3,000 people, and some of them. But together with that, to the parliament, we had certain offers concerning how we can solve this problem and why there were two offers. One offer was in the implementation of certain provisions of the law on voluntarily union of communities when those communities voluntarily created one single administrative territorial unit. They created single authority body. And the other tool, that was the tool that we have been talking today about. This is the law of Ukraine on the cooperation on of territorial communities. That was that exact law that let us implement certain projects that were targeted on solving certain problematic issues that have a local character. The law on a cooperation of territorial communities was adopted in June 2014. There were absolutely no problematic discussions in Parliament. If to, for example, compare it with the law on voluntarily union of territorial communities, but still, it is worth mentioning that majority of municipalities or local self-government bodies still used that law about voluntarily union of territorial communities, and they did not pay that much attention to the cooperation, the law on cooperation of territorial communities. But at the same time, we need to say that the law on voluntarily union has already run its pace, but the law on cooperation on territorial community, we still have some problems in places, and it still has huge potential for its further implementation and spreading. Concerning implementation of agreements, a little bit later, I will show you information about that, but we need to say that before such a reform, we already have managed to implement more than 1,000 different projects around the whole Ukraine since 2020, when we formed throughout the whole territory of Ukraine new territorial basis for the activity of local self-government bodies. Right now, we have 686 territorial communities that signed 431 agreements about intermunicipal cooperation. If we talk about a regional aspect, then it is worth saying that leaders are still the same regions. It's Dnipropetrovsk, Poltava, Rivne. Till 2020, it was those territories where the huge amount of projects were implemented, and they were based on the law on the cooperation and territorial communities. But together with that, there are certain regions where uh, where people are not so active about such provisions. It's, for example, Transcarpathian region, Zhytomyr, Ternopil, Khmelnytsk, Cherkasy. These those regions where we had less than 10 uh, agreements about cooperation. I think that those regions and those communities from those regions have to pay more attention to the opportunities and benefits of this law, because economic effect is pretty huge for further development in not only of community but also those territories where we have those communities. If to talk about dynamics and agreements for years and the amount of agreements that we have, we clearly see that with the adoption of the law, it was 2014, and as soon as it came into force, we had two contracts signed. But at the same time, we need to say that then later those contracts influenced very positively the forming of a full-fledged territorial unity. So while implementing the law on cooperation of territorial communities, when we signed certain agreements later in 2015, 2016, those communities that implemented those two projects, they created one joint administrative territorial union. So we understand that at the beginning we signed certain contract on cooperation, for example, if to talk about Zhytomyr region, Boriv community, and then later in the future it influenced the fact that community agreed that they are one single union and they are one administrative territorial unity. But then later the process was more dynamic. But I would like to emphasize once again that lots of communities were still oriented on the law on voluntarily union. We are talking about 2016, 2017, and then in 2018 when we already started more when we created more territorial communities, they became more active if to talk about engagement and using provisions on cooperation of territorial communities. And actually, those 50 agreements, these were those communities that were created and united because of this law of Ukraine and voluntarily union of territorial communities. We see that we have 222 contracts in 2019. It was the biggest amount. It's just because during this process we had bigger amount of uh, communities formed and they had bigger financial resources, but they had more opportunities to implement certain projects. Concerning 2020, we see certain decline, 106 agreements, because in October in 2020 there were elections in the whole territory, and of course that with the change of administrative territorial structure, the amount of agreements also decreased a little bit. If we are talking about 2021, we see a certain increase, but here communities has just started taking the first steps. 125 agreements contracts in 2022, the beginning of war. So already it was open aggression of Russian Federation. The amount of contracts decreased, but we see certain dynamics in 2023 and 2022, and the amount of those contracts increased a little bit. Concerning 2024, we see that people are pretty active. And already this year we have 16 contracts registered in cooperation. And just today, one more contract came, but that's already not January, and we have information here for January. So we have hope that in 2024 we will have better dynamics, and I think that we will have the results probably as we had in 2019. If to talk about the structure of contracts and cooperation in 2023, 2024, the biggest amount of agreements were in the sphere of education. The most important thing here is inclusivity, plays a great role, opening certain classes and implementation of different projects. So apart from that, we have lots of projects implemented in the sphere of health. We are talking here about buying certain equipment. We also maintain our institutions of health from the primary healthcare, and also we delegate certain responsibilities that are about architecture and specialists in the sphere of architecture and city building. Also, we have here 9 certain implemented projects about administrative services. It is about different centers for the provision of administrative services, improvement of such services, creation of registration services. 7 agreements are on about social service, social security. It is creation of certain institutions that are dealing with people with disabilities and elderly people, that maintaining of certain institutions. Also, 7 projects were implemented connected with the safety, security, especially. It is about centers of security and certain groups about fire protection. There is certain problem connected to labor archives. It is still there. 5 implemented projects in this sphere and 3 projects regarding urban beautification. Generally, about cooperation, forms of cooperation, we need to say that more than half actually is about issues connected with delegating of the tasks and also co-financing and maintaining enterprises and organizations of a communal form of ownership. Apart from that, we have certain 35 agreements connected with the implementation of joint projects. As you can see, according to the dynamic, I think the dynamic is pretty positive. In 2024, we still have the hope that we will have the biggest amount of such agreements once again. If we just look at our indicators from January of this year, of the current year, and we have, of course, certain interest from territorial communities to such contracts. What has changed? That during the last 2 years, it is not just simple, very basic contracts about creating of some kind of communal enterprise or municipal enterprise, but it's already contracts for a long-term prospect. And here, I would like to say that we are talking about those organizations that are, for example, in Dniester Canyon, and there are communities from different regions included there, and a certain project that were implemented on the territory of Carpathians. Those communities that are located in Carpathians. Here we are talking about touristic hubs that are pretty actively implemented not on the territory of certain regions, but they even go beyond certain regions. If to talk about the influence of war, then it is worth mentioning that huge amount of our contracts appeared and they are targeted at safety reasons. That certain that's when we are talking about fire safety and implementation of the project connected with the implementation of the projects aimed at creating safety centers. Apart from that, we also implemented contracts that are connected with the placement of IDPs and a contract of certain Mykolaiv regional military administration of Kramatorsk um, region also signed a contract with Dniester uh, area of Chernivtsi region, where they are still implementing certain project on cooperation aimed at improving conditions for IDPs. As a summary, what I would like to say here, based on our practice, certain administrative territorial unities faced the biggest problem, the biggest challenge, not of the implementing, not the beginning, not the start of implementing this or that project, but actually its continuation and improvement. Here we are talking about the fact that, as it turned out, it is easier and better to create some kind of object, for example, center for provision of administrative services or some kind of service safety center, but then later it turns out that it's pretty costly project, and for its maintaining, for its implementation, we need certain financial resources and certain provision of clients or some other factors. And here we see that in the future, such processes of implementing certain kinds of projects still require using provisions on the law on cooperation of territorial communities, because this will let us, from one side, save a lot of financial resources on maintaining such projects, and on the other side, they significantly fulfill this client base concerning who this or that program targets. And on the other side, at the very beginning, I was talking about the aim of this law that we adopted almost 10 years ago in June. On the other hand, we say that no changes were introduced here. Only recently, last year, changes were introduced. It's around 1 year ago. And once again, with the analogy to the law of voluntarily union, there were some projects and certain communities that were they that did not take part in such projects because they were hesitant. They wanted to see what was going to turn out of this. But then when they saw that those projects were successful, they tried to somehow uh, involve and engage in that project. So that's why certain changes were introduced and they were adopted. So right now, when we in our project already have 5 communities in the project, then the implementation of this project, additionally, some other communities can join without conducting certain specific procedure for that. But together with that, I think that there is an opportunity, and in the dialogue, we can find maybe other some gaps or some things that we can still work on to be more active and to take more active part in the process of implementing of the project on provisions and cooperation of territorial communities. Here we are talking about agglomerates. Here we can talk about some other issues, some other problems connected with the status of this of some assets or enterprise that was created because of the implementation of this or that project. And I hope that we will have some good offers, suggestions that we will try to implement and put on paper so then we can register it and have some legislative initiatives. Once again, I would like to underscore that this law is still relevant and actually it is even more relevant right now. And we haven't you opened all its potential so far, and it really deserves our attention to solve lots of problematic issues that we have on the local levels in particular. Thank you for attention. Thank you, Sergey. Thank you for mentioning those challenges that appear during those 10 years, what communities faced with. It's a great pleasure for me that we have two key projects together with us. And if to talk about the amount of contracts, I think it was the best decision because here we have and social security, education, health protection, and certain services about safety components. So now it is my great pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Maxim Gurdavitsyn, and we would really like, because we understand that the project Dobra since 2016 has been creating with territorial communities. We really hope that they can show uh, their success stories that can be upscaled, or those problematic aspects, as sad as it is, but they still exist, we need to be taken into consideration, and we need to use the chance to delete them on the legislation level as well. Thank you, Natalia. Could I please have my presentation on the screen? Thank you. Okay, I already have my presentation, but I would like to actually express my gratitude for leadership, for the support to the profile committee of the Verkhovna Rada, our profile ministry. We feel the support, communities feel the support. And right now, legislation framework is enough to implement effective projects in the sphere of intermunicipal cooperation. So yes, there are certain issues, but they do not influence that much so that this cooperation is impossible or it has to stop or it does not move as fast as we would like it to move. The only wish of communities to unite and to work on the benefit of the state for the benefit of the citizens of their communities. And one more opinion is that the amount of agreements, of contracts, it doesn't matter whether it's big or small. I wouldn't say that the low number is a bad thing. No, because if it's beneficial for communities to have to sign such agreements, good. If they use this tool, great. We have what we have. We shouldn't force it. We shouldn't push on them. So if it's beneficial for them, good. We have this legislative field. Verkhovna Rada adopted it. Communities can use it. And our task as an international program is just to support our communities, to teach them. And as it has been mentioned by Natalia, since 2016, we have been working, and our approach is very simple. The first thing is that we provide educational courses and we for Romadas, for communities. The second thing that's international visits, and we had such visits to EU countries to show how it works there. And there we have pretty good experience in the European Union this year as well. We are going to continue such training field visits, in particular to Poland and so-called solid component. We help in financing. We conduct different competition standards to finance the best projects, and actually it has been working. So that's the main thing that we can say right now. I cannot say that it is 100% true. It's just observations of our projects, of those communities we have been working with. So the first thing is that the territorial communities are actually even more interested during the full-fledged invasion in intermunicipal cooperation. We started announcing those tenders in our partnership um, communities, and we had less applications before. Now we have more of them. Maybe war gathered all of us. Maybe less, maybe communities have less money right now, but it's the fact the interest is rising. The second thing that forms of cooperation also get wider if you talk about communities. If before there was some, the simplest form was some kind of joint program, but right now it's better quality, it's different forms, and we see huge progress in communities with that. So the forms of cooperation are getting better. And the third thing is that quality of the projects of intermunicipal cooperation increased significantly. If before we received, let's say 70 applications, and 60 out of them we had to decline because there was no essence of kind of intermunicipal uh, cooperation project. Right now, it's very difficult for us to choose winners in those competitions because everything is so cool and of such a high quality that communities are really very much advanced in this right now. To provide better sustainability of this topic, we actually have been working a lot on different topics and manuals. And in 2018, 2022, it is all still there. This year, we are planning to renew them according to new realia and create new ones to have the sustainability and so that communities can use certain materials. I will have two examples of two projects, but today there will be also other projects, great projects, interesting projects that our partners also introduced. First of all, it's widening of the sphere of medical services for citizens of Territorial village community. They are our partner, plus Kitai, Horod, Lashkiv, and Mohyliv communities. This is a shared laboratory in their hospital, the laboratory of clinical analysis. It was also the result of the competition they won. It was before the war. We implemented this project before the war, and they managed to widen the quality and quantity of their medical services, the amount of analysis that they can do there, so the quality of medical service increased. The second really great project is Підволочиськ community of together with Skalatsk and Skorlekivsk community. They implemented the project on creating modern to care after elderly people of such communities. This is a kind of territorial center, and communities maintain it jointly. It's also a pretty interesting project. And why is it specific? I visited actually this specific community twice. The head of this institution, she is extremely interested. She has fire in her eyes. That's just she's such a great person, and the motivation influences, because when people are motivated, when they want to implement something, it influences a lot. We supported the project. They took part in other different competitions in state financing, but jointly we managed to solve this issue. The project is great. And it is worth mentioning about it. I think that now they also provide services to veterans, and because rehabilitation, they have a certain rehabilitation equipment that can be used also during full-fledged invasion, full-scale invasion. Also, what do we have right now? We have more or less the same scheme of working. We consult communities, we conduct competitions, we will be financing winners. The budget for this year of our competition is $400,000. Unfortunately, the deadline is already, we already at the deadline, we already gathered offers of community partners of our project, but they can unite with those communities that are not our partners. So we will continue working in this sphere, and in the end, we will be able to form conclusions, and maybe we will conduct some kind of events to spread the experience of this year. What can we say? So we already announced the competition in December, the 31st of December, that was the last day. Uh, we got 23 application from 22 communities. On the map you can see the amount of regions and applications. The statistics is like that. You see mostly here is from Kharkiv region. They are highly interested. Once again, Kharkiv region. I don't know why it is Kharkiv, but they are very active. They are good at that. Respect to Kharkiv region. But also we have certain communities from Western regions and communities that are at almost near the front line, and they suffered a lot after the full-scale invasion. If to analyze further, than 18 communities participants of this competition are those territories where hostilities are still active or were active. Among them, three are temporarily occupied communities. So three temporarily occupied communities took part in this competition. How does it work? Communities are now relocated. They are on the territory controlled by Ukraine right now. There, they have military administration of their community. They are our partners because right now we have 11 communities which are temporarily occupied. We continue working with them. They're all relocated, but now they are looking for different variants how to continue their life because life has not come to the end. And even when they are relocated to different, I'm not going to say where we relocated them, but it's our territory, and they find their citizens, they know where they relocated. They might have certain needs. They need to satisfy their needs. It might be humanitarian direction needs. It may be business needs. There are even those who relocated their business to Ukrainian territory, and business started working already on new territories, and it already pays taxes, but their to the budget of those temporarily occupied communities. It's extremely interesting, and we will be supporting them in the future. If to talk about direction, it's medical services, social, solid waste, repairment of roads, economic development, beautification, urban beautification, and urban services. It can be implementation of joint projects, delegation of certain tasks, and creation of communal enterprises and municipal enterprises. So there are lots of different things, but as I have mentioned, quality has increased and also the form widened of cooperation. So there is a huge progress. Communities want to gather, want to unite, they want to realize their potential. And of course, there is an issue that maybe certain contracts are done specifically for the competition, and they see, then later they say, then we will either win or we will not win, but they already have those contracts. And even if they do not win some kind of competition, then still they will have to somehow implement their agreement. But we will do everything possible to support them, to support our communities, and to go together to our joint victory. Thank you.
Пане Максиме, дякую велике за
Maxim, thanks
вашу
a lot. And I
відповідь. Якщо
think that
дозволите
if
підсумувати, то які ви
you let
пропонували,
me
це найкраще
coming up,
поєднання
it is the
навчання з
best
практики і
combination
конкретних
of
пропозицій,
learning,
цілі
preparation of project
можливо
offers, and
формулювати на
also
постійній
this
основі, але
direction
тільки
should
коли
be
ви
developed on the constant basis.
співробітництво, тобто цей навик
It will only
взаємодії
prepare, so
буде
this
застосовувати до
practical
всього.
skill can be
Проєктів
used for
безпеки
everything, for recovery projects,
співробітництва,
for
захисту
cooperation
суспільства і
projects with the
подальшому.
EU in the
Це теж
future,
доводить, мені
but
кажеться, про
also
те, що
we have to mention that there is a huge interest, financial interest also to get 50% of additional financing that you provide in the framework of this project. I think that Kharkiv region is also a leader here because they're using all possible opportunities that let them provide certain level of financing of services that have to be provided both for territorial community. That's why I have mentioned that we have two main projects for our today's speech, taking into account that leadership, as Sergei Ivanovich has mentioned, sphere of education prevails. It's my great pleasure to give the floor to Valentina Poltorak, and she will be talking about Swiss Ukrainian project Decide in the field of education. Thank you. Thank you, Natalia. I'm extremely happy to greet all of my colleagues here. It was not a surprise for us that educators are very active in this sphere. And actually, it is an active sphere, yes, but we all understand that education is very educational field. It is completely financed by the state, from the state budget, partly from local budgets. So that's why it's understandable that educators are looking for any kind of opportunities to improve the quality of education, and it means to improve also the future opportunities for the development of children. Our project, we actually consult widely for territorial communities since 2020. We supported the second stage of the reform of decentralization, and actually with lots of communities, we provided consultings for them, and we helped them to create kind of department of education as a structural body of self-government body. And we have been consulting communities since 2020 in the sphere of cooperation with other communities as well. It is understandable that the reform of administrative territorial structure introduced lots of changes to those relations that were built in the sphere of education before. In particular, lots of educational institutions and lots of education institutions actually were financed by the regions, but then when the functionality changed, communities started having very difficult functions, not typical for them, and never before they were on this level of management. So that's why, in fact, together with them, since 2020, we have been consulting them in working on such contracts. In 2022, already during the full-scale war, we treated exactly seriously this issue of a joint formation of educational institutions and I would say even institutions in the sphere of education, because we had lots of requests from communities to create inclusive resource centers of professional development for pedagogical employees, and also organization of certain extracurricular activities for children, different groups, because those institutions, they are financed from the local budget. And here, the answer to this question, why these institutions are created by communities together, it's very simple, because resources have to be sought in your budget. And since during the war, there are practically no such opportunities almost in all territorial communities. That's why this cooperation is wider, significantly wider now. In 2022, we actually launched consulting support of communities, and jointly with communities, we managed to sign 7 contracts. But we did realize that we need to have certain interesting elements there that will somehow, liven up the communication of neighboring communities, because mostly these are neighboring communities that sign such contracts among themselves. And we introduced a grant program. It was opened in August previous year. And actually, during 4 months, we managed to sign 21 agreements. 17 grants are already implemented. These were mini grants, very short incentive that actually push those communities that had been discussing such cooperation for many years but couldn't sit at the table of and negotiate this. So it was incentive for them to do this and to start and to meet each other halfway. We are actually working already now in 4 regions. If to talk about the level of pilot communities, and also those contracts were signed in our region's partners. All in all, it is 21 contract that we helped to sign, covers 52 communities, and it seems to me that it's pretty high result. 21 communities were covered in Ivano-Frankivsk region. It's eight intermunicipal cooperation. Poltava, seven, and 17 were covered. Odessa, three agreements, three contracts. They covered five communities. And Chernihiv region, our new partners, they joined us a little bit later, but together with them, we already managed to sign three contracts for nine communities. Actually, the main directions, we have been talking a lot about them already. It's inclusive resource, maintaining of inclusive resource centers. It is the majority of all contracts that we actually signed. Inclusive resource center provides services for schools and children with certain needs. It is not educational institution as such, but it is mostly communal enterprises that are created in territorial communities. The state finances salary for eight employees of such center, but all the materials, everything that has to be there. And you all understand that since the full-fledged war, the amount of people with certain needs, with nosologies, increased significantly, drastically. That's why this material technical base is financed by community or several communities. And it is natural that here, of course, we need to unite together so that's why this service with children with inclusivity becomes really quality. Right now, in the framework of other initiative, Decide with Budova, Decide to Recovery, we are building inclusive resource service center in Borodyanka community. They suffered a lot from the war, and I would like to say that statistics is pretty harsh. After the occupation in that community, amount of people with nosology increased by 20%, and now every quarter we fix such increase, and it starts from 2 years old children, because before that there were mostly school children. So I think that this direction should be strengthened, should be developed by the state, and we should all together draw attention of territorial communities that there is such a great tool, and money can be invested jointly, and children might have this opportunity to be serviced in such services. And these services usually have also mobile groups, and if they are financed properly, then this is a chance for full-fledged life and for being treated for children with nosologies, and also support for their parents. The development of extracurricular activities, it is also very important direction, because it is completely financed from local budgets. That's why in 2022, lots of communities, unfortunately, had to close such institutions, and that's why they optimized their costs, their expenses. But life has shown that it's extremely important direction, and especially now after many years of distance learning and COVID, it is this opportunity to catch up all losses in in educational sphere. We know that it is this research visa, and it showed very sad results this year, that children in rural areas are lagging behind by 4.5 years from those children who live in urban areas, if to talk about educational sphere. And this extracurriculum activities, it is actually one of the directions that communities can strengthen, and that's how they can give chance for future for those children who couldn't get quality educational service. The third direction we all paid particular attention to, and there was huge request from communities for that. It is the creation of centers of development for pedagogical employees. Before that, in every populated area, there was some kind of methodology cabinet, and on the basis of it, teachers exchanged their experience and conducted different events to know all novelties in their sphere. Then later, those places were closed, and in the framework of reform, new Ukrainian school centers of professional development had to be formed with absolutely different functionality, and these centers also had to be financed from the local budget. But it is understandable that when we have limited resource, constrained resource, money were saved on this important institution, but still there is a huge request from pedagogical employees and teachers for the development, especially during the reform, and reform is still going on despite the war. That's why it was this third important direction where we also provided grant and support to communities. We also offered them to think about cooperation in the sphere of servicing auto park, school auto park, but we haven't received any kind of request so far because it's very just it's a question of for the discussion. Usually, it's about the ownership for this auto park because heads of communities very often discuss who's going to be responsible for that and how to build mm, those relations here, but we still think that joint maintenance of auto park is our future because unfortunately density of population is decreasing and it's understandable that it has to be optimized and we need to find resource to transport people to educational institutions and it's a huge part of expenses in any kind of local budget. I think that any person who it's relevant to this instrument to cooperation of communities. There are lots of different forms. It can be delegation of certain tasks, implementation of common projects, co-financing of certain enterprises, creation of municipal enterprises, and creation of a joint management body that we have mentioned today. But our statistics show that the simplest and the most understandable way for communities this is implementation of a shared project, joint project. For instance, an inclusive resource center, they create some kind of resource room, and this project takes 6 months, and this is what this contract of cooperation is about. But it can be also 1 year project. It's a little bit more difficult with 2 year project because financing for the next year, as always, is under is still not we are not sure about that, but at the same time, this the simplest form was the most popular. Apart from that, delegating of certain tasks is also pretty popular form. In particular, in inclusive resource center, for example, communities delegated provision of children with inclusivity with to inclusive resource center of a neighboring community they had agreement with. Also, co-financing or this form of cooperation was mostly about inclusive resource centers, but we also had certain contracts also on co-financing and maintaining centers of professional development. All in all, 16 territorial communities that signed such contracts implemented already the project for 2 million hryvnias together with us. They co-financed it partially, but once again, it was this idea of, small incentive to strengthen the communication and cooperation of communities. We did not have any kind of particular targets for us to significantly improve the infrastructure of those inclusive resource centers or centers of professional development. We were talking with communities about the fact that there is such an opportunity to negotiate, to agree, and to really improve educational services in their communities. The most active community was Ivano-Frankivsk region, surprisingly, and there we actually had the biggest amount of such contracts. Mostly, majority of such communities were pretty small, with population up to 5, 10,000 of people, and they actually lacked this resource for creating something of their own. So, and very often in communities, there are not so many people with inclusivity, so communities even did not have sense to create and to maintain such center. Centers of professional development are also very interesting in Ivano-Frankivsk region. You can see it on the screen that we have examples also from this in Poltava region. In Poltava region, we mostly several, 2 or 3 communities cooperated, but we also had the example when such contract was assigned by 6 communities, and we are extremely proud of that. We were with them on all the stages of negotiations. Odessa region, here we have three contracts. Mostly they were assigned by two communities, once again for inclusive resource centers, centers of professional development. Chernihiv region, here we have their own peculiarity. In Chernihiv region, they have very low density of population, and it is, of course, strengthened by the fact that they are near the border. They have lots of safety risk, lots of evacuated children. But all in all, still those communities negotiated. They were trying to find some common ground and sign contracts for cooperation. I would like to just name several examples of already implemented projects. For example, an art school of Hradec at the community, they created the audio studio for audio recording and the sound studio. So actually, the cooperation with the peculiarity was that we were developing those projects together with them, and we gave grants to the local budget. Of course, we looked through all the documents, we consulted to them, we helped them, but all those projects, they were implemented by communities themselves. We didn't buy that equipment for them. They were looking for this of their own, and through the system Prozoro, they bought it, they set it, and this way of cooperation helps engage additional funds because community is actually the author, creator of such a project, and of course they are interested in looking for more resources. Надвірна community, territorial community, the real implementation of the right for the education for children with certain learning difficulties, and they bought this interactive floor. They dreamt for a very long time about this, and they did it extremely fast with the effort of all educators of a community. Rashateli community, it was a pretty huge, dispersed community, but they initiated this project Digital Hub for Professional Development because lots of populated areas where teachers do not always have opportunity to go to central building, and they did not have this opportunity to conduct online learning in a quality way. And now they're developing in this direction, so they bought all needed equipment. All in all, they were pretty little projects, and actually that what um, led them to be implemented in a pretty fast pace, 2, 3 months at max, and they already have that effect and see that effect from cooperation and that feedback that we have right now from communities, territorial communities. It shows us that they continue looking for partners. They keep on thinking about the project that can be implemented in the nearest future. We already have certain appeals on consulting already for new projects and new contracts, new agreements. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about those projects. I think that despite their size, I still think that it's very positive experience, and I would like to give the opportunity for my colleague Andriy Matsokin to talk about the main problems that we actually have faced with during signing such contracts and during developing this cooperation, let's put it like that, among between the bodies of self-government. Thank you, and hello to colleagues. Yes, most probably we can. It's like they're not problems; they are challenges that uh, communities have to face. And actually, this problem or the challenge is in the fact that not all communities, from the legal point of view, understand how they need to implement this or that norm. So that's why our activity with communities was not only in the fact that we helped them financially. We also helped to consult them from the point of view that we provided some kind of a roadmap for communities how to do this or that stage. If we are, in particular, when we are talking about forms of contracts, then communities had questions whether they can simplify this procedure somehow. And communities do not always read everything that is written in the law, and more often than not, they just hire some consultants, experts, and depending of the expert or consultant opinion, the community will do the right or wrong choice. Just several challenges that we observed during the work with communities. I would not say, for example, that this second form, when communities sign the contract with some other community or other communities on implementing of joint projects, it is not a serious form. It is a serious form. Why um, do they choose and why they chose mostly especially Sergei mentioned, yes, that mostly it was this joint maintenance, financing, and so on and so forth. And around up to before 2000, mostly the form was penalized registers, and mostly the form was of this joint implementation of common project. Why? Because later, when communities, for example, create some kind of joint enterprise or governmental body or something, then later it is the challenge to maintain it in the future because communities, at least right now, have more funds for that, more less revenues, and what to do later when there is no resource to maintain this institution or enterprise. Also, the amount of staff is decreasing drastically. Uh, Assets also because communities give everything for the victory, and that's why challenges from this side, of course, will be present for communities, and other challenges are those issues that about the procedure of making decisions concerning contracts of the uh, different first, fourth, and fifth form, because the procedure is that there had to be public discussion. It's simplified a bit previous year, but it is still there. There has to be this public discussion. There has to be a decision made by certain council, and it is not always possible for communities to convey that message, that effect that they will get, uh, and they cannot always convey this message to the deputies concerning the implementation of this or that project. Or they might not uh, be able to negotiate with them, or maybe deputies have different moods about that. So yes, these are particular challenges. And one more challenge that I have mentioned at the very beginning, it is the fact that they cannot read certain norms. They lack this knowledge because they lack certain specialists who would be able to go deeper into that procedure of cooperation of territorial communities. So those communities that implement such projects, at least here, we mostly communicated not so much with lawyers, but as with heads of certain centers of professional development, inclusive resource centers, and such heads they are not always, in majority of cases, they do not have certain experience and education to understand what should be written in this or that agreement or contract. So that's why we have such challenges, and it would be good to work on such challenges in the future. Thank you. Thank you, Andrei. Thanks a lot. Unfortunately, we are lagging behind from our time frame significantly. It says my great pleasure to give the floor now to Mariana Oleski, the head of the State Agency for Tourism Development. Several times we have mentioned today already that cooperation is developing and there is a huge effect in a touristic sphere. So Mariana, please, the floor is yours. Thank you. Hello, dear colleagues. Thank you for this opportunity to take part in this event. It is a very important roundtable discussion because really right now we are moving to decentralization in that format in which previously regional state administrations were working. It's pretty difficult to promote and develop territories from the point of view of touristic initiatives. And we understand that historically in Ukraine, very often such territories for rest are not connected with existing territorial structure, administrative territorial structure. So that's why in the world people start talking about tourist destinations. So these are places that are united by certain common touristic routes and products, and they have to be developed. And also there is such a notion called destination management organization. Um, and it is management of such territories that right now in Ukraine we actually haven't had before, but it is one of the tasks of the um, development of tourist agency, and we're working on that. And this cooperation of communities, their uh, unity through intermunicipal cooperation is the most correct way right now to unite those territories and develop them together. For example, the function of such organizations are estimation of a current state of the market, strategic planning, implementation of tourist policy, creating of certain products, development of business and its cooperation with each other, monitoring, digitalization, certain crisis management, education for representatives and employees of the spheres, everything that the small community cannot deal with, and of course promotion and branding. So common branding for certain territories is extremely important because their budget are gathered, the understanding, the awareness of the brand strengthened. And right now in Ukraine, we do not have that many brands from the point of view of cities. When people say that I am from Kyiv, I'm from Odessa, I'm from Lviv, I'm from some kind of big city which has budget for communities, for it's usually difficult for people to say that I'm from some kind of small village. But when we are talking about such brands as, for example, Podilla or Gutsulshchina, then we can develop them, and people might have this wish to honor and to actually feel this belonging to the territory and to develop it in all the spheres. And with joint efforts, we can do that, and it will let us better unite their functions and to work more effectively with citizens as it was before on some kind of regional or state level. So in fact, such organizations, they exist on regional, national, and local levels. Concerning local, it can be, of course, through cities, it is one organization, but if we are talking about some kind of small communities, there can be several of them. So strategically, they are planning, they are dealing with marketing and with the positioning of such destination, regulate the process of forming tourist products, implementing the policy, and they also analyze the market and investigate the market. So, for example, right now we have actively studied the experience of foreign countries, and for example, in the Czech Republic, such brands are for such destination as, for example, Southern Bohemia. When they jointly, there are some kind of small communities, but in the format of some kind of association, they cooperate with each other. They have 65% of non-commercial, so it is what communities add to the budget, and 36% of involving business because they're also interested in strengthening of this brand and its development. And for example, this region is the candidate for culture capital of Europe in 2025. A small community cannot apply for that, but in such a union, they have such opportunities, and organizations are working on that. And of course, as we understand, we know that in the world, such regions as Toscana, Provence, Kakhetiya in Georgia. So we do not know what exact communities are there, but we know that as of now, this brand is well known for us. So our task is to have such unions. Right now, we already have a pilot project for communities, three of them: Khmelnytsk region, one Chernivtsi, it is Kamyanets-Podilsk, Khotyn in Chernivtsi region, and also in Khmelnytsk region, Starushitsk and Kitai-Gorod communities, and they already made a decision on creating a joint municipal enterprise that will be developing the brand of this region because it is not an industrial territory, and their main revenue, main income for its hospitality, its tourism, its guests, they have to be engaged and to develop this area better. Also, with ULEAD program, we now have a competition, and ULEAD legally helps this project, and There is also competition for several more communities in the sphere. It's in several regions, lots of actually regions applied, and we encourage communities to keep on working in this direction because, especially for those communities that do not have any other types of income or revenue, for those communities for which hospitality is the main area, but very often they do not get taxes out of it because lots of it it's a shadow market. This effective management will help to work with business, engage investment, and develop their territories. Thank you. Thank you, Mariana. I think that this picture definitely has to have certain name and branding, as you showed the example of international countries, to position it as additional touristic cluster. And if you do not mind, today we were talking from different sides, from the side of ministry, of course, from the side of the project of technical support, but it is extremely important to listen to the opinion of those communities. Why do they sign such contracts of cooperation? What is the effect? Economic or social effect, because I think it will be difficult, as Valentina has mentioned today, to define what will prevail, money or social effect from signing such contracts. So today we would really like to listen to our heads of communities. I would like to give the floor now to Victoria from Voznesensk community. Belzer Victoria, Voznesensk City Council. As far as I know, Victoria is online with us. Yes, hello. Can you hear me well? Yes, we can hear you really well. Yes, if you don't mind, I would like to have a presentation on the screen. I can say that for the last several years, we have been working on creating in our community, together with neighboring communities, compost cluster. And I would like to give the answer to the question that you asked, why are we doing that? Because we, as a community, we as a community has such a landfill of solid waste, and every year it catches fire. Why? Because lots of organic wastes are there, and hazardous gases are there, and then summer it's hot and everything catches fire, everything that is on landfill. Actually, it has been exploited for a pretty long period of time, and right now it is over crowded, if we can say it like that. And we, even before the war, we understood that there is this problem of solid waste management, and we tried to solve it somehow. If to talk about the composition of those wastes, that, as I have mentioned, we analyzed the morphology, and we saw that almost 60% in the structure that organic waste. Those organic waste that are actually the reason of very often fires in our local landfill. As a help, we recently we have this law that has been recently adopted about waste management. According to it, a local council should have separate collection of waste, and then later provide for the additional for the reusage of such waste. We understand that unfortunately, locally and independently, our community will not be able to fulfill all those needs that we have. First of all, it's huge load on the local budget. Right now, we have almost absent certain policies and procedures connected with correct utilization and collection of such waste. We understand that those waste that are created in our community, it was Nasainsk city and two villages that are in the community, and there are 37,000 of citizens living there right now. They're not enough for economic justification of creating enterprise. So actually, there are a lot of them, yes, but it is not enough to for this production to have economic component. So that's why we understood that our neighboring communities have similar problems. If Voznesensk, for example, has their own landfill where they can utilize solid waste, that in neighboring communities, they do not have such legal landfills, and they have huge problems with solid waste. Before the war, we started actively popularizing in and compost traditions. We all know that lots of our citizens live in a private household. In Voznesensk, right now, we have 19,000 households. Each of those households have their own garden. And on this, there in that garden, they very often have agro products, and they waste from the production of those agro products. They just dump on the garbage on the landfills. And very often in spring, where we cut fruit trees, and in summer, where people harvest carrot and beetroot, and all that waste is just on those landfills, just dumped there. In autumn, we also have problems with leaves because people try to dump all the leaves on the landfill. So we started conducting informational campaigns, and we started saying that it is important to compost. It is important for what you produce in your garden to live in your household as some kind of fertilizers. And we conducted awareness campaign, informational campaign, and we gave such individual composters for different homeowner associations, for schools, and for kindergartens to have this culture of correct waste management. But we also know that in the territory of our communities, we have a huge business, that agricultural business, and unfortunately, it is not enough to have the regular composter to deal with this problem. That's why we decided to have this idea of creating compost cluster and to join our efforts with neighboring community to be the most effective in gathering organic waste, and then later that organic waste can be recycled at the compost station, and we can create compost that can be later used at the same agriculture, helping producers. If to talk about who we decided to cooperate with, then it is intermunicipal cooperation that gathered as of now 5 communities. You can see them here on the slide. We tried to understand here the logistics of producing those waste at the compost station. We calculated the volumes of such waste, and for ourselves, we defined and initiated last year this cooperation with such communities to be the most effective in solving this problem. It's a great pleasure that all communities agreed that yes, independently, this problem cannot be solved, especially taking into account new demands of the law. And here we have a very quality local policy of solid waste management, and it's better to combine our efforts to solve this problem. The solution was found in the format of creating of compost station. Right now, we already have land for 5 hectares dedicated for that. We already calculated that we need compost station that will be 6,000 ton capacity, should be 6,000 tons per year of recycling, and it costs around 10 million of revenue. So to talk about construction works, this platform will be already close to that already acting landfill of solid waste, but it will have its own territory, the system of let's say saving and recycling collected waste. To do that, we need certain equipment, and we are very grateful to our donors, partners, international organizations which are interested in our idea and that are ready to provide us help and opportunity to take part in different projects, competitions, and our project also takes part in competitions in Dobre, and we want to buy certain equipment to recycle organic waste in an effective way and to create organic fertilizers out of that. And additionally, we look into the future and we dream that our community, the landfill, which right now looks like a pile of garbage that catches fire every summer, looks as it is in Europe. That's why we have intermunicipal cooperation with our Denmark and Brandra sister city, and we are actively learning their approaches to the organization of the station of solid waste treatment, and we hope that in the future our next projects will be already about certain recycling of different waste like glass, paper, plastic, and so on and so forth. So it's really good that this question of intermunicipal cooperation is becoming more and more relevant. We are using all the opportunities provided for us, and we hope that our experience will be useful for other communities as well. We are ready to share it, and we are always open for cooperation and exchanging different ideas. Thank you. We're extremely grateful to you for not for joining this tool of cooperation of territorial communities, but also you managed to engage additional tool to that international cooperation and using of the best practices of the countries of the European Union. So thanks a lot for that. And if you do not mind, I would like to give the floor now to Mikhailo Natyajuk, head of FASTIF City. Kola, please, the floor is yours. Yes, hello, highly esteemed colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to talk today. And if you do not mind, I will be frank with you. I will be open. Our community, we have contracts on cooperation with all communities of FASTIF region. It is 8 contracts on cooperation. We signed those contracts in a framework mode. We signed lots of spheres there because life can bring you any kind of challenges. And we didn't know that we can have full-fledged invasion with all consequences, but after administrative reform with certain legal basis, we signed such contracts for being able to move forward. And I would like to tell you that such contracts are practically not working in Ukrainian conditions because we lack external financial support, because we have political component where in which every city head is working and every head of the community. And that's where they face certain challenges. To decrease the network of educational institutions, politically, it's very difficult because it is a challenge, and population does not support that. And to say that let's have one kindergarten for 2 communities, I do not think that any kind of council or head of community will take this responsibility. Concerning health institutions, when from rayon level such health institutions were moved to the local level, and there was an offer, let's have joint communal non-commercial enterprise, municipal enterprise mostly, communities on the territories of which they didn't have such institutions, they said no. It's your territory, they pay taxes to your territory, so you maintain this, continue maintaining this, even despite the fact that citizens of neighboring communities can have certain services from such institutions. We know that the National Service of Health does not fully cover cost of those services, but if it's on your territory, then it's your responsibility. So please continue working. That's why also a uh, uh, social security institutions, the same. Optimization is impossible. Once again, of course, because of what? Because we have layoff of employees. We have also the fact that this institution is far away from the population. That's why the political decision is not popular, and mostly nobody agrees with that. That's why here we can talk only about new projects that still are supported by partners, either from the side of ministries or international partners. And I absolutely agree with my colleague that right now, the most beneficial direction in intermunicipal cooperation is solid waste, because we have experience, and I think pretty successful experience in this sphere, because right now, 3 communities in Kyiv region, that's Fastiv, that's Borispil, and Brovare, we jointly create joint enterprise on recycling solid waste. And in our case, all those communities of passive region join this cooperation in to such extent that their volumes of solid waste they will move to that newly created enterprise. So one communities get benefit because they create enterprise, they have new uh, working places, and as in our case, we take away ecological problem from our area concerning the landfill of solid waste, and other communities they do not have this problem that everybody has now. It is utilizing of solid waste. And when we have this understanding of mutual beneficial cooperation, then this process can move on. So that's why if, and really it's a euphemism, but in this mechanism, it is pretty useful and effective. But request, first of all, to our Western partners to support municipalities in such intermunicipal cooperation now. Maybe some kind of grant support can be provided so that municipal cooperation can be in the format of win-win. So, for example, if we create the same inclusive resource center, then to for this to have a kindergarten in or platform for this in one community and in the other, and there can be some external support for maintaining it, then it will be working. If it's only in one community, it will be opened only in one communities, and other neighboring communities will already ask questions. Where is our benefit in that? What is beneficial for us here? What is our interest in that? So that's why only in the format of intermutual, in the mutual benefit, can this process keep on going. Thank you. Thank you, Mikhailo. Thank you for once again raising this topic, this question that has been mentioned today already, and it was about uh, who will have the ownership rights in the case of using certain tools of cooperation. Of course, we understand that it is not yet a resolved issue, whether it's a joint ownership or how it will be used in the future for all engaged communities. And as you have mentioned today, Maxim and Valentina also talked about that the question of financing it is something that influences the choice of the tool and continuity of cooperation that is between communities. It is not. I actually skipped our two participants. Sorry, it was moderator's decision. If you do not mind, now I would like to give the floor to Noskova Yulia, and she will have the presentation from the point of view of cooperation of communities in the sphere of housing and communal services. But please, I have a political decision from Alexandra Azarhina to prolong our today's meeting a little bit to have additional 15 minutes. But I would like to ask our next speakers to be as concise as possible and not only say why they did that, but also what benefits were there or what kind of problematic aspects you face to for this practical case to become the basis for implementing changes in the legislation in particular. Yuria, the floor is yours. Hello, can you hear me? I hope that you can hear me. Thank you for this opportunity to talk today and to express my opinion. I am the representative of a Cherokee community. Our head today, Denise, is working in Washington right now in this it's Ukrainian delegation, and he actually is talking about the position of frontline communities. And if I actually was invited here to present a successful case from the point of view of our partners, Dobra program. Thank you for the opportunity to apply to submit our project. And I was listening carefully the previous speakers concerning the topics of such cases. Our case is actually frontline communities and those communities that are under constant shelling. For example, our project is about housing and utilities, and Dobra program announced this competition, and we really need to have equipment in our community to be able to recover our region. So actually the uniqueness of our project is in the fact that actually with our cooperation we create um, technical reserve. The form of cooperation is to delegate the tasks of communities, especially in our community. Our community was not under the occupation. Sometimes we have shellings, but still we are 40 kilometers away from active hostilities. Other communities at Polohiv, Golopilla, Komazoryansk, and Vasilyev communities, and together with them we conduct intermunicipal cooperation they are in more difficult condition. And actually for now, together with the head Dennis Korotenko, we made a decision whether it is relevant to have such cooperation, and it took us a half a second. And when we are talking about conditions communities are in right now, they are extremely different, but I would like to emphasize the social responsibility component. And if we are talking about years before the full-fledged invasion, of course, we as Ukrainian communities that were included to the reform of decentralization actually supported it, and we immediately saw fast results of such reform. And we were competitors among each other. It seems to me that right now our society, in the conditions of war, in the conditions of very different realia for Ukrainian communities. If to compare, for example, somebody is talking about touristic project in the conditions of war, but somebody understands that at first it will be at first they have shelling impact and then air raid alarm starts working. And I do not say that it's a bad thing or a good thing. We just have to accept that, and we need to cooperate on the basis of empathy, cooperation, and supporting of each other. I think that here we need to talk about the focus of attention on our values, on what we are for each other, on what and the fact that we need to have trust between communities. That here we are talking more about gathering. Of course, economic effect, and it has been mentioned a lot today. It is important, but it is also important to understand that in this project we, as applicants, and taking into account those communities that we really believe that very soon they will be deoccupied and they will be able to full-fledgedly use project opportunities that we have been working on together. I think that we need to mention that, and those programs and those opportunities of participating in the projects that are provided for us by our international partners and our donors, they strengthen cooperation and trust among communities in such different Ukrainian realia. If you have any questions to me, because we will see actually, we cannot say that it's a successful case, it's just a submitted project, but we hope that we will be able to become the successful case and to talk with you in the nearest meeting about the result of our cooperation. Thank you, Julia. Thanks a lot. I understand that in your concept or in your project that was submitted for this competition, I can definitely say that not all projects of intermunicipal cooperation will have economic effect. Very often it has social effect. Not all services are something that can increase the revenue part of the community, but still they can create something else, social security, cohesion, and the willingness to live on the territory of the community. Of course, we should be very grateful. We would like to express our gratitude to you, to have this initiative working with temporarily occupied communities. So thank you for that. And if you do not mind, I would like to give the floor to Volodymyr Shmatko right now, the head of Chortkov city. Volodymyr, please answering your question right now. What is the intermunicipal, what intermunicipal contract now has the biggest amount of participants? That was actually your question from the chat, from online. Unfortunately, to tell you on the spot to answer this question is impossible, but we are absolutely sure, as Alexandra Zarhina has mentioned at the beginning, that solving of this issue of recovery or giving the new life to the register of in the contracts of municipal cooperation that should appear in the nearest month will let every community, territorial community, every partner just to have analytical analysis, just to have the analysis of such information, who are friends, whether it's a social or economic effect of certain projects, and how we can scale such practices. Now the floor is yours, please. Thank you. Thank you. And I think that you can hear me pretty well. Yes, yes. Thank you for such a great event, Alexandra. Thank you. And to all the ministry for this communication of for such practical cases today on Friday that we have it. And I listen our heads of communities in O and representatives of different structures that helping Ukraine become stronger through intermunicipal cooperation. This is really great that we have this new law right now. It is a little bit too much bureaucratized. We already felt this with colleagues when we started the process of creating of our joint Tapla Podilla, Warm Podilla cluster, touristic cluster. We as Chortkov community initiated that. I would like to have my presentation on the screen right now. Could you please help me? I hope that I will be able to be concise. Today, it is extremely important. If you take into account competition between communities, and it's absolutely normal when communities compete for people. Now, small cities, they of course lose to big cities. It is extremely difficult to retain great specialists in our communities, and there are different reasons for that. Education, work, and infrastructure right now is also taken into consideration. So that's why we, with colleagues, head of small communities, try to find some kind of our own peculiarity and the task how to retain our people and to engage others, those who migrate. Because of the war, we have migration to the west. It's bad. And as the head of the city and as a person who lives in Ukraine, I can say that it's really bad when people move and even from those areas where the areas are already liberated, because we have perfect country and we need to do everything possible to stop migration from Odessa, Dnipro, and Odessa, because we have to be strong at every corner of our country. But nevertheless, we also have to compete. I actually extremely grateful to Mariana, our head of agency, for presenting in a really nice form the presentation. I saw our competitors, our neighbors, Kamenets-Podilsk and Khotyn. They create a similar touristic cluster. We decided to have Tepla Podilla, Warm Podilla touristic cluster. If you have never visited this area, I invite you to do that. You will definitely love it, and you will never have second thoughts concerning getting back there, or maybe you would even like to stay to live there, or even maybe to work in one of the 15 communities that agreed and signed memorandum on creating touristic cluster Warm Podilla at the southern of Ternopil region. It's a Chortkov area. It is very difficult way, and I support my colleagues, head of communities that were talking before me, and our partners, friends from different programs, that competition does exist, and all those threats that we were talking about today, like who's going to be the owner of this asset, who's going to maintain this municipal enterprise that will be jointly created, where will taxes go. If Chortkov initiate as neighboring cities say, then they will have more revenues out of it and they start being jealous. And why do we initiate? Even I, as the head, say that, dear colleagues, this center can be in Zalishchike or in Borshchiv or in some other village, but let's create it and find opportunities to develop our best touristic area, Warm Podilla. We started this way, and on the next slide, you will see our stages of creating this project. We signed this memorandum. We invited all the colleagues for the event on the 5th of September, 4th of September in Chortkiv. We had such a presentation. It was our day of the city, and we announced there that we are all together. It will be pretty difficult to gather everyone at one place at one time in short, keep all heads of communities. That's also there is this constant competition between us, but we agreed that all personal things that's one thing, but intermunicipal cooperation is our future. So we have this memorandum, we have a decision from the City Council of Chertkiv about this initiative. Till the 6th of December, we managed to receive 13 decisions out of 15 of those who gathered initially. Because of certain reasons, two communities still did not join us. Now public discussions are taking place. I would like to emphasize, I do not know whether some people, deputies are there, I see Olena Shulyak, that the law is a little bit too complicated. And I will definitely, together with my colleague, offer my offer, because this bureaucracy, those decisions of executive committee, all those public hearings, that's too complicated. But we do try to move on, and we already have good results. The next slide, you will see our first results. Together with great team of Warm Podilla, we won the grant of Ukrainian Cultural Fund, UCF, and we got funds together with an NGO to create a virtual tour with the objects of Warm Podilla. We are really proud of that. We had a presentation of the result of this grant, and lots of people are interested. Those who have never been here, those who have never traveled and never spent their money in our community. So we hope that this grant will help people to love Warm Podilla more. On the next slide, you see our new project. I'm very grateful. Just now we mentioned that ULEAD is also involved, and we were chosen in the ULEAD project, and we will get as a result this legal support and help so that our municipal enterprise can start working. Once again, there is a question where it's going to have a legal address, but Chertkiv will let all ambitions slide just to it to work and for us to be cooler than Кам'янець-Подільський and Хотин in our warm Podilla. On my next slide, you will see this whole sample of the best communities of Ukraine that gathered with the idea to just from the tourism to have effective tourism. And I'm extremely grateful to Mariana for her emphasis that very often tourism that's about consumption, and there are not so many taxes because of that. But so we will discuss and we will try to find a solution how to make that tourism profitable and for it to pay taxes to communities. But it is extremely important for us to be able to sell this product correctly and to promote it. We still have to learn a lot in this sphere, and we need to talk here about this natural and architectural heritage on Ukrainian and international level to involve money to that warm Podilla area. And my last but one slide, you will see the elements of our virtual tour. If you have never visited it, please, I invite you. You will definitely like our touristic area. And on the last slide, the best slide, you see here our wonderful Chertkiv. Thank you, dear colleagues, and everybody in the ministry, especially Alexandra, for continuing this right regional policy from local level to regional level to national cohesion, and everything will be great. Our main task is to win, and we believe in our armed forces of Ukraine. Let's not immigrate. Let's be proud of being Ukrainians. Let's show with our own example how to work transparently and fairly in our country, and then everything will be great. Thank you. Thank you, Volodymyr. I think that you today had the best advertisement of touristic region, especially your last slide. It is, we definitely would like to visit each of those places, and we are very happy that you had such successful projects to use available financing from the side of technical support programs. Once again, to what Valentina and Maxim mentioned, of course, additional financial resource incentivize competition, in particular among those who are going to develop touristic area, and it will definitely be a great impetus for a post-war recovery. If you do not mind, we already behind our time frame, but we promised. We have two raised hands online, and I would like to invite, we have two participants there. If you do not mind, our technical team, could you please give the floor to Alexander Solontai? He wanted to have some kind of small remark. Alexander, please, the floor is yours.
Я вас чую і готовий
I
виступати.
can hear you, and I'm ready to speak. I see you, but you do not see me, but it's okay.
Отже,
But I have great sound.
на
So
початку впровадження
at the beginning of implementing the law, it has been mentioned very rightly. It seems to me that it was Sergei who mentioned that we wanted to move from municipal enterprises to certain household management issues to serious contracts in the sphere of services. But now we have a little bit different tendency. If we analyze all the last contracts, that they are in the sphere of in the social sphere, education, medicine, those contracts are almost absent in management sphere. During the full-fledged invasion, we had just very few such contracts, and during the winter, only one contract about municipal enterprise. For example, let's take some sphere which contract might help. For instance, transport sphere. This is the issue of mobile transportation, organization, and gathering efforts of communities so they can provide the mobility of their citizens on wide areas. There are some joint projects, and it can even become the priority. But during the time of full-fledged invasion, none such projects were registered. No implementation, and for 10 years, the functioning of this law, there are only 4 such contracts. One contract from 2018 to 2020, 2017 to 2021. So this improving of the law, it's not only technological and legal, but also from the point of view of targeting this law to certain thematical spheres. So we can solve those problems and those areas that are the most painful. Here we are if to talk about Chornobaivka and Skadovsk, they have a contract on cooperation in the sphere of implementing aviational complex, so common joint procurements. It is interesting that one community was already deoccupied at the point of contract. One is still occupied, but still communities found this courage to work on this agreement that presupposes help for our militaries. So we already have influence of martial law on such contracts and vice versa, but unfortunately there are only few such examples, and of course we need to look at the issue whether we view this as a tool as such, then we need to stimulate, or vice versa, it shouldn't be the tool of additional financing of armed forces, or just leave it as it is. But the aim definitely was not to work in a military sphere and in the territory of defense, but certain issues with procuring, with buying certain military stuff can be such examples, but definitely a successful example that it has to be multiplied and spread it. I would like to draw attention that during this full-fledged invasion, we signed and implemented contract if communities in Lviv region, Rava-Ruiska, Dobrosiv, Maharev, they started in February 2022 and they finished signing the contracts in May 2022. The whole 2022-2023, they implemented the joint project on Euro Railway 1335. The Ministry of Infrastructure is involved there. The project is already on the international level. Communities are component of this project for from the funds of self government bodies. They bought they bought railways, narrower railways, and now we know that we have additional trains that go through those communities. So that's an example how important it is, that tool, and how can it work in the conditions of martial law, and how we can direct and multiply, and once again the same transport sphere. So I think that we need to have two directions from the point of view of technologies and procedure, and from the point of view of incentivizing certain spheres. And definitely management component should be there, because it looks like in those areas where it is difficult for communities to have certain costs and expenses for social, for example, sphere, they gather to cover those gaps. But even when they're thinking about tech equipment and technical and municipal enterprises, they still try to do it separately. So the law should incentivize both processes. Alexander, thanks a lot. Next time we invite you to join us here offline, then it will be easier for you to easier for us to control you time-wise, because you promised only one remark when I was invited, but I hope that every remark that I mentioned was important. Of course, absolutely. If you do not mind, dear colleagues, we have two more participants that would like to voice their opinion. I would like to give the floor to Sergei Yatskovsky and then to Oksana Kysil. Technical team, could you please join them to us? Yes, hello, can you hear me? Hello. Yes, we can hear you. Hello, I will be concise. I understand everything about the timing. I would like to say that we have been talking a lot about directions today, and they are all important, but I would like to talk about the very law. When the law was adopted at the beginning of decentralization, it, as Serhiy mentioned, had to be this incentive. And there were lots of tools written in it. Right now, the heads of communities will absolutely agree with the fact that lots of bureaucracy procedures are there. Two decisions of session that takes a lot of time. Village territories, uh, they meet very rarely. So the first remark that we need to simplify the procedures in the law, because even communities choose the simplest method. And the second thing that I would like to say, that, dear colleagues, we actually have much more contracts of intermunicipal cooperation that are registered, because they are not under that procedure. They have different procedure. We have the budget code and the law on self-government, and it allows to have this horizontal subvention among communities. And very often communities use this opportunity, right, Volodymyr? Because it's a much easier method, which does not require different solutions, decisions, and so on and so forth. It can be solved in one session, and it's this inclusive resources center in Ukraine. Very rarely serve one community. More often it's two, three, four. But if you look at the register, then there will be not even uh, even the three of them, because they have this horizontal subvention. So while we have this mechanisms, then the contracts will be used rarely. And one more thing, do you remember that increase in diagram 2019 2020? I would like to remind you that in that provision of regional development, in the point of 2, we have financing of contracts of intermunicipal cooperation. Right now we do not have that. So that's why at that time, we had this active increase because the state supported intermunicipal cooperation and its development. Today, we have talked a lot about the support of the programs, and today, as a representative of the DECIDE project, we have been working where culture during the military law. You mentioned additional financing that was possible for territorial communities in the sphere of intermunicipal cooperation. And if you do not mind, let's give the floor to Oksana Kysil. Hello, dear colleagues. Oksana Kysil, Covenant of Mayor East EU project, and we are working on uh, energy efficiency. projects, and my comment will be first of all, I would like to support the head of FASTIV that we need to all gather with the sector of solid waste, and intermunicipal cooperation will be the key tool for different investments for engaging GBRD and others. And here it is very important to have this cooperation with the Ministry of Environment Protection and what I hear from the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Infrastructure and what we see with communities, you have to gather, you have single mechanism of promoting intermunicipal cooperation. And one of such events we offer at the end of March, we will have joint event with the Ministry of Environment, and one panel will be dedicated to intermunicipal cooperation in the sphere, in the sector of solid waste. There are lots of questions to that, but those best practices of communities will help us to um, actually inspire this huge cluster of other communities when we're not ready for this yet, because lots of efforts are needed right now. And the second thing is the sector of water. This and the level of water service enterprises, because small water services enterprises will lose their money. So we need to work on such variants when providing services on the level of one vodokanal can be of water service company can be provided to several communities. So that's why it is a sector when it is very important to work for the Ministry of Infrastructure, because the issue of drinking water is a challenging one, and it will be in till 2030 for other regions. It will not only be south, it will always be Zhytomyr and Vinnytsia. So that's why those mechanisms of cooperation in the sector of water are extremely important for us as well. Thank you. Thank you, Oksana. Of course, we understand perfectly well that intermunicipal cooperation or spheres that can go under such cooperation go beyond the mandate or responsibilities of the Ministry of Infrastructure. And we extremely happy that there will be an opportunity to combine certain initiatives with other ministries, in particular Ministry of Environment. I see that we still have answers in the audience. I just wanted to tell you a little bit. My name is Andrei Litvin of Irpin Territorial Community. I'm the advisor of Irpin Head. I would like to tell you a little bit about our experience. After Irpin was liberated, we were in the city that after hostilities was absolutely ruined. And I would like to express my gratitude for such cooperation to Kyiv and Bilatsarkva and Buzivka and Obuchiv and Mironivka and Volodarka. All these communities together came, took their equipment, gave people to us, and we managed to clean out the city. That's a great example of work of the communities, and we understand perfectly well that during hostilities it is very much needed. And after the deoccupation of Kherson, our communal representatives of Irpin amalgamated communities, territorial community went to help in Kherson region, and this mechanism is really underestimated. Why? Because every community has their equipment. It's different tractors, cranes. They have their municipal enterprises, and they might need different people, and all those people might also help while gathering in recovering cities, especially rare cities. We can help and unite and help those communities that are really suffering today. And this is a really working mechanism. And we can see it now in the example of our community. We used this. So let's unite, let's cooperate and help each other. Thank you. Thank you for such a great comment from Irpin City Council. Thank you, of course. From All Ukrainian Association of Communities, Nadia Slesarchik, Deputy Head of Executive Director. I would like to say that since the beginning of the war, since March 2022, we have such a project, United Communities, with the help of USAID Agro program. And one of the component of this project is cooperation of territorial communities. In the framework of this project, we moved help to frontline territories, to IDPs. That's already more than 2,000 tons of such loads, and also we maintained cooperation between Ukrainian communities, and we also found work help abroad. And it is a very interesting case of mutual help of communities. Is that communities sometimes even gave subvention from their budget to help other communities. For example, Avangard громада in Odessa gave their subvention to Kherson, Kyiv, Vysokopil. It's the same from Ternopil community gave their subventions to Kherson, and I would like to say that if it's a simplified procedure, that it is easier for communities to find common ground to cooperate. And the very contracts and cooperation are really a little bit too complicated. And right now, we implement such initiative, which is called grain seeds of victory. We take such seeds from international companies and we will give it to communities later so they can put it in the ground. Thank you. And actually, I would like to give the floor to associations, if you do not mind. Sergey, Ukrainian Association of Regional Councils. I will be concise. Thank you for such an opportunity to discuss certain issues that were the topic of our today's discussion. Our association has been trying for 10 years to spread and promote practices of cooperation between communities from interesting cases. That's our experience of conducting by regional councils competitions on supporting cooperation. Leaders are here, Poltava, Lviv, and Kharkiv regions. Right now, we are trying to have it in the form of positive cases, practices, and to upscale it for other regions of Ukraine. So we are ready to be active partners, to engage, to be involved in the development of needed practices and ideas, and to the development of needed legislation. Thank you. Thank you, Sergey. And I would like to give the floor to Tatiana Arsenyuk, the representative of all Ukrainian Association of Territorial Communities, and then to Vitaly. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, today I am here on behalf of the Association of Amalgamated Territorial Communities. We really support such a tool. First of all, we conduct consulting of territorial communities on how to use it, how to use forms better, and also on the website of our association, we have additional component about cooperation of territorial communities where we gather the best practices to use for others to use them and also to learn how to do this in a proper form. We today would like to express gratitude to international projects that support communities and provide such financial support because it is really an incentive for signing such contracts for cooperation. When we are talking about cooperation, then it's not only quality service, but also effective, efficient using of funds. And it's extremely important for us because we have a platform of local budget that is working with the association, and we pay attention to this as well. Today, we would like to support the offer of Sergei Ivanovich that we really need to implement such tool and create a platform where we'll be able to show the best practices, the best cases, maybe informational, some kind of inquiries to fulfill this website with this information. This is a great idea, and I think that it will be incentive for communities that haven't made such a step yet. And of course, my extreme gratitude to those communities that demonstrated different cases today, different examples of cooperation, because today we have to listen to communities because they can give us a hint how to improve such a tool. That's all. I do not want to go too much beyond the timeline. Thank you. Vitaly, now the floor is yours, and to Alexandra Azarkhina for final words and for summing up. I will try to be very concise, just several statements. First of all, lots of very sound things and very wise statements we have mentioned today from our representatives of communities and those who are online and here with us. But we definitely have to understand that we have to incentivize certain contracts in the ministry. By the way, can be very can be a leader, because very often when we are talking about using of uh, such agreements of cooperation, this is about quality or improving quality of public services, education, inclusive services, social services, and so on and so forth. So here probably it is worth mentioning uh, to mention the absence very often the standard of providing such services, and we it has to stimulate communities to sign such contract. The second thing that has been mentioned today, we will do much more economic development on the example of a touristic sphere. That is one of the good cases where we can use such contracts about cooperation. And the third component, and we do not have enough of it right now, Serhiy can talk a little more about this. It is common contracts on the side of creating joint management bodies and communities. We can talk here about some kind of evolution, providing services and earning money from implementing some touristic projects and to create some management bodies. We do not have such examples so far, but definitely I agree with my colleagues who have mentioned about introducing certain changes to the legislation, because most probably this law that we have right now from 2014, it has to be detailized to be able to move in those three components that have been previously mentioned. Thank you for the participation. There were lots of interesting things mentioned today, and I think that this law and this practice has bright future. Thank you. Thank you, Vitaly. Thanks a lot. And dear colleagues, we are grateful to all of us who joined us today offline and online. And I would like to give the floor to Alexandra Azarhina for summing up our today's event. You know, to for partnership to be possible, we need to have uh, mutual respect and mutual understanding. So we need to learn about timing and mutual respect, because on the one side, it means that this topic very painful for us and very interesting, but on the other side, we have to be able to stick to our timelines. But just a practical thing, three things that I think that we will use to continue our cooperation. The first one about bureaucracy and the complication of procedures. We see that uh, the new procedure doesn't always work under our realia, so we will start working on changes, and if association can provide us certain offers or projects of technical support, we will be grateful for that. The second thing is about joint ownership, because as far as I understand, it is the law on communal ownership, and the PIN community mentioned that how to use this and so on and so forth. So we definitely have to continue working with this, and in the future we will have even more opportunities if we manage to solve this issue. And the third issue, and I think that the whole event, everybody has mentioned that. You know, we all wanted today to kind of honor our success, and I'm very grateful for that. And our colleagues from Great Britain mentioned that we have this feeling of huge progress and of all those things that we have managed to achieve without having such experience previously, and it definitely deserves respect. And I would like to congratulate all of you who are dealing with those issues right now. But we have this clear understanding of connection of financial opportunities and certain intermunicipal projects where it was connected with grant, where it was connected with certain more subject conditions, it was much faster. And from our side, we will start working with international financial organization, with donor organization, and to think what kind of incentives we can have from our side, whether we need to include those preferences that maybe it can be some project that can be implemented as intermunicipal cooperation project. That's from my side, and we will be very grateful for different offers if you provide them by the QR code at the entrance. There were such programs with a QR code. Of course, we will also send you the information for your emails, and I hope that we'll have fruitful cooperation in the future. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Have a great and safe evening, everyone.